Welcome back. In this video, I wanted to address just a couple of things. So firstly, about a week ago Sunday, I had 100 records that were up on eBay. Those auctions ended, and you all know this because I then made a follow-up video on shipping them, but I wanted to kind of do a little bit of a retrospective on how those auctions turned out, just really briefly. I also wanted to cover what I think, I guess, are the highlights of the next block of auctions, which actually went live just yesterday on Sunday and will be going through this coming Sunday. And then I also wanted to give you an update on my turntable purchase. So, for those of you who have been kind of following along with the rationale of this thing, I'm selling 500 records for my collection, and in part what I wanted to do, independent of just thinning out the collection, which I definitely need to do, I wanted to use some of the proceeds to buy a turntable. So I wanted to give you a little bit of a status update on that as well. So before we dive into those three topics, as always, hit like, hit subscribe. You can hit the notification bell so that you can stay on top of, not only this content, but the next blocks of auctions that I'm going to be listing over the coming weeks. So do hit that notification bell. And then as always, of course, you can follow me on Instagram at what_can_brown. All right, so just to get this out of the way, I know that I've kind of had a number of videos in a row that have to deal with this auction and the fact that I'm selling records. I mean, this is kind of what's dominating a lot of my time, I have to be honest. So most nights I'm preparing the next auctions, or I'm still shipping stuff out, and it takes up a lot of my time. And so I'm kind of killing two birds with one stone by being able to make videos of this stuff, but I also know that some people not interested in this content as much, and they want me to be covering, say, reviews like the latest Tone Poet that came out that I actually picked up. So what I decided is that I think I'm gonna calm down on the auction related videos outside of maybe a couple of previews here and there, and I'll just sort of let these things run. And otherwise, I am going to shift to some of the other types of content that probably is going to get a little bit more interest, but not today. So, so a couple of things in terms of outcomes from these auctions, right? So again, just really briefly, what my goal was to sell 500 records from my collection, putting them all up on eBay, and then I'm doing them in 5 separate blocks of auctions, so 100 records at a time. What this allows me to do is not only sort of, reduce the monumental effort that is creating 500 listings, but then it's also not as big of a deal to sort of manage that when I get questions or ship all of them out within a reasonable amount of time. Don't get me wrong, just shipping 100 records took, it was good that people spread their payments out over a few days, because then I had like an extra day or two to finally get the rest of this stuff out the door. So it was a little bit of a monumental effort, but what I wanted to report on is just a couple of the sort of high-level results that I think would be interesting. Not interesting because you necessarily should be sort of sharing in my, success or something, but there's a lot of folks out there who probably are in a similar boat as me and want to thin out their collection and are wondering what the process is like on eBay and whether it still works for sellers like you and me, right? We're not all Jazz Record Center that gets, as of today, $12,000 for a copy of Blue Train. Most of us don't get that kind of attention on our auctions. So in any event, here's a couple of high-level stats that I thought would be interesting. So firstly, I thought that the auctions in aggregate were a great success. So I netted, including shipping charges, because eBay will actually pay you, right? They collect the shipping charges and they group it in the actual payment that they send to you. So for the 100 records, I netted just over $4,500. So I was surprised to make that much. And so back out shipping probably was, there were 62 separate boxes. You could say that the average shipping cost, because some were multiple records, might have been like $5. So you're back out another $300 or $400 basically in shipping, but still it netted over $4,000. So I was very happy with that. And I hadn't actually done the calculation in my head to say, oh, this is what I would expect to get from these 100 records. I kind of didn't want to know. These are records that have been set aside for some period of time, some in a closet. I haven't had my eye on them in a really long time. And so just this idea that I could turn something that I was really trying to avoid into money that I can use, I thought was really exciting. And so, you know, don't get me wrong, when I'm looking at the list of records and the selling price, there were some that did better than I thought, and there were some that did worse than I thought. And I'm going to address that here in just a second. So out of the 100 records, all but 2 sold. And those 2, I just thought it'd be interesting to show you the 2 that didn't sell. So this is Chris Connor Sings the George Gershwin Almanac of Song. And I don't know that the record, I'd have to go back and check. I don't know that the records were in the best shape, and that may be the reason why it didn't get a bid, even at a $7 starting price. So there's that. The other one was Johnny Smith plus the Trio. This is on Roost. And again, you know, it could be that Johnny Smith just doesn't get as much attention, or the fact that that record is just not particularly valuable. So I guess what would I do with records that don't sell throughout this process? I'm probably going to do one of 2 things. Either I'm going to list them for $1 and hope that somebody in, you know, one of these future auction blocks will just sort of add it on, just to, you know, just to have something cheap. The alternative that I've done in the past with records that don't sell is I aggregate them over a period of time and I stick them in a box at the end of my driveway. And I put a like a curb alert on like Facebook Marketplace, and just somebody can, people come and pick them up. In fact, every single time I've done that, somebody's been at the house within like minutes picking them up. But in my mind, I'm like, I just need them out. I seriously need them out. So I haven't decided what I'm going to do. I'm probably going to put these up on eBay in a future block and just completely slash the price. So that's probably what's going to happen with stuff that doesn't sell throughout. So 2 didn't sell out of the 100. 2 weren't paid for, including a Booker Irvin on Prestige. I canceled that auction. I had to. They sold technically on the 25th, and here we are in March 4th, and I still haven't gotten paid. I only just canceled it today. So I gave them enough time, and we'll see what happens. But you know, typically you don't hear from somebody if you cancel their auctions for non-payment. So anyway, 2 weren't paid, and I will be putting those back on the block. You know, not in the auctions that are up right now, but probably in the next ones. And then actually out of the rest of them, so you know, again, so 2 didn't sell, 2 weren't paid for. 1 is being returned, and you know, here's the thing: is that you know, I don't always get it right. And so that's on one hand. And the other hand is that records sound different on my setup versus somebody else's setup. And so, you know, it wasn't a particularly valuable record, I don't think. Or I mean, it wasn't like a high dollar one. So it's not that big of a deal. What I'm probably going to do once I get the return is evaluate the condition, determine if it was indeed, you know, something that I should have caught, right? Like maybe if I had play graded it, you know, front to back, maybe I would have adjusted the grading a little bit, and so I'll just have to reassess and determine if that's something that I need to change before listing it. But hey, you know, no big deal. I mean, eBay offers free returns, and I'm happy to allow people to return records that they're not happy with, because I do want everybody to be happy with their purchases. So I thought, as it is, and I know not everything's been delivered probably to its final destination, but I thought one return, not that big of a deal. And I think even more importantly, some of the biggest ticket items, I've received either positive feedback or direct messages from people saying, hey, this is great. So very happy that especially when those high dollar ones are delivered, that there's no issues. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I was happy, you know, and some probably, a couple of the records were a little bit disappointing in terms of their final sales price, but some were, you know, sort of pleasant surprises. And I really I try not to think about records individually in terms of whether I'm happy with it, and I like to think about the aggregate, and like I said, you know, you win some and you lose some, and I was happy with the ending sort of amount that I got, and it gives me a lot more energy for continuing to list the next 4 blocks. I don't think that the other blocks are going to net as much as this first one did. I did have a couple of especially high dollar ones in there, or you know, more valuable ones, but I've got some nice valuable stuff coming up in some of these future blocks as well. So what I did want to address is not the ones that I thought went for more than I expected, because I thought that that would be way too tacky and I don't want people to feel bad about their purchases. And here's the thing, is that any record is worth what somebody's willing to pay for it. So it's like, who am I to say what something is worth? The market dictates that, right? So what I did want to do, though, is address a couple of the records that went for way less than I expected, because that's the kind of stuff that buyers should feel good about. I mean, again, who am I to say what something is worth? But there were a few records that I thought would go for a little bit more. So I'm not going to mention who bought it, but I'll mention a couple of those records. So firstly, I think one of the best deals, in my opinion, was the Miles Davis Quintet Sextet. So this is an original pressing on Prestige, just in really nice shape. I graded it, I believe, VG++, and I'll put the auction up here so that you can kind of see what it was. So this one had a final selling price of $118. And especially when I see the Jazz Record Center selling other Miles Davis Prestige records and making $500, $600, $700, $1,200 for some of these that they're selling, I was a little bit bummed. You know, don't get me wrong, this is a little bit of a compilation album, so it's not like it had been released before, I believe, on 10-inch. But still, I still thought that I'd get more than 118, especially given the condition. But that was also a duplicate for me. So it's not like I was selling my only copy. And again, you win some and you lose some, but the buyer of that one, I personally think did pretty well. So another one that wasn't quite as high dollar amount, or I didn't even still expect it to be that high dollar amount, was the Thelonious Monk Orchestra at Town Hall. So this is a stereo original on Riverside. And it was quite clean, especially the cover, but the vinyl was clean too. And I thought I conservatively graded it, if memory serves. And the final price on that one was just $31. So you know, I thought it would go for more, but maybe there's not a lot of energy for that particular session. You know, not the absolute best recorded Thelonious Monk session ever, but I thought it might go for more. And then maybe just one more. So I thought that the Eric Dolphy Out There. So this was not an original, and honestly probably wasn't a second pressing either. I bet it was a third press, because it was on the Blue Trident label. You know, it had the Van Gelder stamps. And what to say about it? I mean, you know, sometimes when you see these types of titles, these reissues by Prestige, you expect them to be on recycled vinyl, but this one was not, and actually it sounded pretty good. And this one just sold for $31 as well. So, you know, maybe just not as much energy, I guess, for the non-laminated cover and the Blue Trident label. And I know a lot of people are after original pressings of that one. But still, I thought that maybe to go for a little bit more than that. So I think across the across the list of titles that I had, hopefully everybody who bid and won felt like they were getting something that, you know, was less than their value for it, right? And that's why they were bidding. But those are three that I thought, man, you know, could have done better. But like I said, it all evens out. I really don't care. You know, I'm happy to let the market dictate the price on all of these, and that's why I'm doing auction format. All right, so let's move on to the next portion of this video, which is a little bit of a preview of this next block of 100 records. I mean, you can go on eBay, you can search my username CBWAYO, encourage you to follow that. Because you can follow sellers, right? So like once you find one of my auctions by searching for my username, you can follow me, and then you get notifications even through eBay from when I list stuff. So I only wanted to bring up just a couple, because you can go on eBay and check the rest out. I guess there's 6 titles here I thought I'd bring up briefly, and not all of these are necessarily the highest dollar ones. It's just, although I think some of these are, but they're just ones that I thought that I wanted to call out. So the first one is Walt Dickerson, To My Queen. This is a great record, a copy just sold by Jazz Record Center for something like $700, but theirs was an original, and this is not. So this is an early reissue. It doesn't have the deep groove, and it's pressed on recycled vinyl, which is pretty common for new jazz titles when it's a reissue. When it's not a deep groove, it's pretty common. So in any event, it does have the purple label. It does have the Van Gelder stamp, but it also kind of has that recycled vinyl texture in it. I still think that this is a very worthwhile record because yes, there is hiss, but it's not like there is hiss. And don't get me wrong, there's elements of this record, especially in that first track, which is the full side long, where it's just vibes and bass, and you are going to hear a little bit of that noise floor in the in playback. However, there's also like any time when there's like piano and drums, like you just really completely lose sight of it. There's still a lot of like fidelity or whatever in the in the record, even as it is, even with the recycled vinyl. And so I still think that it's worthwhile for the right person, right? Somebody who's not going to be somebody who can handle with a little bit of handle both the noise floor as well as a little bit of static, especially in those quiet moments. So who knows? You know, that one's not going to sell for nearly anything like a like an original would. But I still think it's a fun one that's included. So this next one that I wanted to mention is Nathan Davis Makatuka. So this is on the Segway label. I've brought this record up a few times recently in my channel because somebody was selling shrink wrapped copies. This one is not one of those, I don't believe. No, I don't think this one was something that I picked up shrink wrapped, but it's in pretty great shape. There's a lot of energy for Nathan Davis. This is not one of his titles that goes for like $400. This is one that goes for something more reasonable, like maybe $100 or maybe even less. Obviously, up to the bidders. This next one is one that's gotten some early interest, more so than anything else that I've listed thus far. So this is Young Lions, and there's going to be some glare, and the reason is because this is still in shrink wrap. And so from everything that I can tell, and I don't want to take the shrink wrap off, I'd rather leave that for somebody else to do. I think the cover is in great shape. Obviously, this is a stereo and not a mono. And I don't know if that matters to people. I mean, I listened to this and I think it sounded fantastic. And here's the thing, I have a mono and I listened to the stereo and the mono and I couldn't really decide which I wanted to keep because I think the stereo is in much better shape than my mono, but I ended up keeping the mono. This thing is just really nice, like high gloss. I'm sorry, I'm not even holding it up really. There you can see the sort of a shallow deep groove or a narrow deep groove, stereo label there. But I mean, this thing is like slick. Somebody must have unsealed this relatively recently, or they unsealed it and then they like never played it because it is it's quite clean. So two more that I wanted to share. This is an interesting one, Art Farmer's Crawl Space. So a lot of energy for this these days, both because it's on CTI and CTI is having a little bit of a resurgence, as well as there is a sample on this. And offhand, I'm trying to remember what it was, but gosh, what is it? You'll have to. I'll put it below, but it's been sampled is my point. And what's super cool about this particular copy is that it is a white label promo. So I thought that was pretty cool. I am keeping another copy of mine that is not the promo. I just thought it'd be fun for somebody else to have the promo because I'm like, it's all music to me and it's cool to have the promo, but I was like, maybe I'll let somebody else grab that copy. All right, so the last one that I wanted to bring up is something that I sort of teased, I think, on Instagram, and that is, so this is Ramsey Lewis's Bach to the Blues. That's not what's interesting about this necessarily, although it's good music. What's interesting about it is there's a variety of signatures on the back, and it's admittedly hard to tell. I have no reason to believe these aren't real. I mean, they're all different. They're using like different pens. Like has the feel of it being legit. But I haven't matched up every one of these signatures just yet. I think I looked at Ramsey Lewis's and I was like, yeah, that's definitely him. So anyway, Ramsey Lewis is up here. You've got L.D. Young here. Let's see. Red Holt is right here. Richard Evans. So this could be Richard Evans up here, but I'm not sure. He would be the fourth person that's in the lineup, but it doesn't necessarily mean he was the person on site to actually be like available for signing. So this could be Richard Evans, but it's hard to tell. And then this one that's above Red Holt, it looks like it's a John somebody, and I just can't. I just can't tell who it is. I thought maybe John Lewis initially, but that wouldn't really make sense. With Ramsey Lewis being on here playing piano. So I don't know who it is, but it's just kind of like a fun collection of signatures. And I know that there's some folks out there who like to collect signatures. And so I thought that this would be a particularly interesting one, I guess, for folks to potentially bid on. All right, so lastly, the turntable update. So I have not yet purchased a new turntable, but what I have done is borrowed a turntable that will be available to me if I want to purchase it. Here's the thing. I've been going down this process of researching turntables and trying to narrow down a list. And what I am going to do, by the way, is I'm going to create a video that is the list of turntables that I've narrowed it down to, because I want other people to understand what my consideration set is, and I guess what I've learned and what kind of my criteria was, right, for narrowing it down. Now, that being said, having a turntable that I was able to borrow that is for sale and I'd probably get a good deal on is pretty compelling, and I'm just going to have to be really careful not to let the convenience of it already being in my room and set up outweigh the fact that I should be making the best decision for me and what I want to listen to. So what is this right here? So this is a Rega Planar P3. So it's the P3 model. I honestly have been looking at P6s, but this is a P3. It comes with an adjustable speed box, so that there's a power box underneath it that allows me to switch between 33 and 45, which is particularly convenient because otherwise without that box, you'd actually have to like replace the belt or change the belt or move the belt or something like that in order to switch between 33 and 45, and I didn't want to have to do that. So I borrowed this, and it came with a box. It also comes with an Ortophone Quintet Black S cartridge. Now, this is a moving coil cartridge. It is low output, and I'll tell you why I know that in a second. And it retails, just the cart retails for something like $1,000 new. Now, this one may need to get retipped at some point in the potentially near future, and I know that can cost a few $100s or maybe as much as $300 or $400. So that's a consideration as well. Although I've been playing records and I don't hear any issues. I don't hear any disturbance or interference or anything like that. So I don't exactly know. I know that the person selling it to me knows how many hours it has on it, so I'm going to have to double check. But anyway, that's what it is. And so I guess a few reasons why maybe I wouldn't want to keep this particular turntable might include the fact that, well, first of all, the sort of, I don't know if you call it the plinth or what you want to call it, but it's white. And I mean, here's the thing, it's not all about aesthetics, but there is a P3 model that's wood. And so, might it be nice and might it be make a little bit more sense in my room to have one that's wood? So that's one thing, very minor, obviously. The second thing is I had been looking at a P6, and do I want to sort of settle for a P3? Am I the sort of person who's going to notice the difference? I don't know. But keep in mind, this also has a much nicer cartridge than I would ever buy for myself. And so the fact that somebody else bought it and now maybe I'll have to have it retipped every now and then, that's a little bit more enticing than, I forget the cart that typically comes on the P3. Or even the P6, but this is a nicer one, and so there's something compelling to that. Now, the other thing is that this cartridge, like I said, it has very low output, and so what I realized very quickly when I was setting this up is that I have my Macintosh units over here, right, and I have the turntable. So I have this. It's a C26, right, preamp, and I have MC2105 amp, and I plugged in I connected it all, and I played a record, and I couldn't hear anything. And so for those of you who are equipment people, you're screaming at me right now. You need a phono preamp. You need a phono preamp before you hit the preamp, or at least a phono preamp before you hit the amp. And I wasn't prepared for that. I think when I took this turntable, I heard moving coil, but it didn't occur to me that because it was a moving coil cartridge, I would need to get a separate phono preamp. because I'm not an equipment guy and these things don't necessarily occur to me, and I've been running moving magnet all along, right? Moving magnet cartridge as opposed to a moving coil. So fortunately, maybe like 2 years ago, I got a Chinese tube amp, and for that amp, I bought a Parasound XRM Z phono preamp. I think is basically the model. It's the long one. Anyway, I bought one of those preamps, and at some point, I actually sold it to a local buddy because he needed it. He needed a phono preamp for something that he was doing at his house. And I reached out to him, and funnily enough, he kind of made it available to me. I guess at this point he had already bought several of them for different setups he had in different rooms, and he just kind of had the same one that I sold him there and kind of ready to go. And so I went over and picked it up, paid him for it, so bought it back, brought it home, connected it, and so now I've been listening to this P3 with the Ortophone quintet. And yeah, on this setup, and still able to use my C26. I kept that in the chain, and certainly the 2105. Somebody was telling me I wouldn't necessarily need the C26, but what I did need was a volume knob. That's one of the reasons why I had to include it, because the 2105 doesn't have a volume. The phono preamp doesn't have volume. Certainly the nothing related to the turntable would have volume, so I needed to have a volume knob. And okay, don't get me wrong, there are gain switches on the 2105, but where you can control the left and the right channel, but it's nice to have the various sort of bass, treble, mid, balance and stuff like that the C26 has, and those are things that the 2105 doesn't have. All right, so all that being said, the question is, am I blown away? Am I fully convinced that that moving coil is the right way to go, and that a P3 is the right way to go, and I should just keep this? Well, I'm not yet. So I brought this thing home on Friday, and I was gone all weekend. So I've literally listened to like 2 or 3 records. As soon as I'm done with this video, I'm going to be playing more, and all the rest of this week, I'm going to be kind of working out this this turntable a little bit, playing a variety of records to try to get a sense of what do I like, what do I hear different about this new turntable and corresponding cart, etc. And the phono preamp. I mean, there's a couple of things that are new here, right? So it's not just I'm A-Bing a turntable. Now it's a phono preamp, and it's the cartridge. But that's just what I got to do, I guess. And this is such a great opportunity. So what I can say is answer the question: does it sound better than my Marantz with my Nagaoka MP200? And the answer is yes. It does sound better for what I've listened to. And I'm not prepared to really get into too much detail on exactly what I'd like to do is really put together my thoughts after listening to more records, and kind of giving a full assessment of what I think about this P3. So what I would love, honestly, quite selfishly, is if people think that the P3 with the power box and this upgraded cart, and whether I have the right phono preamp here, because I can get that, sell that and get something else if I determine that I need to have something else. I just kind of wanted to get this thing back so that I could be listening to records again. So I would be interested in what other people think, though, about what this is and the fact that I'm considering other options, because there may be some of you who say steer clear from the P3, or some of you that say, you know what, the P3 with the power box and that cart is better than a P6 and what it comes with. I don't have that kind of experience, and so I would love it to solicit your feedback on whether this thing that I'm currently just borrowing is something that's going to be worthwhile for me. Because remember, I'm not going to be able to actually test drive very many of these things. I'm kind of at the mercy of like what friends are allowing me to borrow. And so it's nice to have something to borrow, but otherwise I'm going to have to sort of take a leap of faith and buy something that's brand new that maybe I've only heard at a local shop. So that's kind of where I'm at. But I am very excited. I am very excited to borrow this, and I'm excited to finish this video so that I can go listen to some more music. So that's what we're going to do. Hopefully this was interesting. Like I said, I'm going to be covering some new releases coming up, and not talking about these auctions quite as much. But if you're interested in buying some vinyl, head over to eBay. CBWAYO. All right. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.